Edward Elric in the world of JJK. That would be very interesting because the way his alchemy would work, interacting with the likes of curse techniques, and the variety that the world of Jujutsu Kaisen would offer, would land to some very interesting battles. Now, I could give a quick answer of where I think he'd be, like straight up power scaling wise, and then lastly, I'm going to talk about it as if it was a story. If we're just talking power scaling wise, I think in terms of like sheer versatility and power, I think he should be considered special grade, or at the very least, right on the edge of achieving special grade, like at the absolute pinnacle of a first grade sorcerer. But that's me lowball. I definitely think he would be classified as a special grade. His alchemy is just way too versatile, and he is very powerful. Should easily be classified as such. So, in terms of a battle, I think he'd be able to deal with a lot of the different interactions that the special grade sorcerers could handle. Probably leaning closer to the top of special grade. I doubt he'd be on the level of Gojo. I don't think he'd be able to handle fights as intense as what Gojo could handle, like 1v-alling the disaster curses, or 1v1ing Sukuna. Actually, scratch that, 1v3ing Sukuna with Maharaga and whatever the other one was. But he'd definitely be strong enough that most characters individually would have a very hard time dealing with him. Now, if his alchemy were to be the same, but in the form of like a curse technique in JJK, and he were to have something like a domain expansion, I don't even know what it would be, but it should be insane. With his vast knowledge and sheer arsenal that he has with alchemy, who knows what his technique would be? Who knows what his domain expansion would be? And in terms of his character, if we're talking like story-wise rather than power scaling-wise, I think he'd be like another Yuta, but he'd be part of the group that is like Yuji's group. I think he would stick with Yuji's group. And if he did, I think his assistance with pretty much any of the arcs that the main cast goes through is going to be pretty insane to think about. But the most important arcs that we gotta talk about are the Shibuya incident, then you got the Culling Games, and the Shinjuku Showdown. And each of those arcs individually have so many factors and so many times and placements and wherever you would put him in, how many gauntlets of enemies you have to go through, that for each of those arcs individually, you could make an entire video just dedicating to how he would interact with each of those arcs individually. Now, another question. Do you think he would be one of the few characters that could cause soul-based damage? In other words, do you think he'd be able to cause permanent harm to the likes of Mahito if he were to encounter him in a battle? Whether that be in a hypothetical 1v1, or him joining alongside Yuji in one of the fights or altercations against Mahito. If he can cause soul damage, I think he could beat Mahito in a 1v1. And I think there could be a pretty interesting hypothetical here where Mahito tries to transfigure him, but accidentally touches one of his artificial limbs, because as you could see based on like his outfit, you can't just immediately tell that he has artificial limbs right away. So, imagine Mahito's shock that he tries to use his technique on somebody, and it just doesn't do anything, because the thing he's touching is just machine. It's not a soul. It's not a living thing that he can manipulate. So, that would seriously catch him off guard and give Edward a significant advantage. And if you throw in the fact that if he could do soul damage, that could be enough of a slip-up on Mahito's part to give Edward the win right there. I'm personally going to skip over the Culling Games for right now because that's just way too long to discuss. But could you imagine the possible team-ups of him with one or two, hell, maybe even three of the characters that were fighting Sukuna alongside him? The kinds of combos, the kinds of things that they would be able to dish out on Sukuna would be monstrous. And again, if he's able to do soul damage, that is going to be even more devastating. Because imagine Yuji landing soul damaging black flashes while Edward is landing some insanely powerful alchemy attacks. those two working together would be a monstrous duo. And genuinely, if you have those two, plus the people that were already there, I don't even think you would have needed some of the other people that were there. I think Edward's involvement could cause so many people to just still be alive now.